it is a fact that our economy is pretty much driven by the service industry. Long ago, again, because of the party and the very policies that much of the current now free market fundamentalists want to push, is was what got rid of our entire manufacturing and heavy industry base, which is what led to essentially the downfall really of the north, and what led to these left behind areas being so bad. And obviously looking for someone to blame, well, hey, don't blame us, blame the EU. They're the ones at fault. And one of the things I have often said about this is we have to make sure that we get these people and point their anger in the right direction, because it was never the EU's fault for being left behind. It was the EU that put money into these left behind areas where the government didn't. And now, if you think the government's, quote, levelling up agenda is going to come into any effect any way whatsoever, you can think again, because there is no way that Rishi Sunak is going to actually implement any mass spending that is really needed to get these areas properly levelled up. Now, of course, the EU were perfectly, actually quite willing to do that. Under the Northern Powerhouse Initiative, they were more than willing to invest a lot of money in that. Of course, we are no longer members of the European Union, so that money no longer exists. But enough about that type. Today, we're going to talk about financial services, because the financial services industry is, again, a major part of our economy, especially in London. And now we have a very interesting admission by Boris Johnson, and that he has admitted that this deal is not good for our financial services, meaning that you will probably see in the not too distant future many financial services and banks and businesses start to slowly but surely relocate offices, jobs over to the continent, namely to Frankfurt, Amsterdam, even Belfast. And especially with the EU now wanting to put and build up the more EU's financial institutions, and willing to put money into that and to actually regulate it to make sure that it does do its job properly, we will see, and we will especially see, London being treated as the bad boy of banking. And that will not be good for our reputation either in Europe or abroad, as we will soon see that Europe becomes a far more attractive place to send your jobs, investment and business. And we will be left in complete splendid isolation. And once again, the bizarre history of the UK turning towards the EU, getting involved, and then pulling out again, and then pulling back in, and then pulling out again, is bizarrely replaying itself throughout history once more. So, on to this article then. So, before we do that, please do hit that like and share button, and of course down below there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link, and thank you very much to the people that do support me that way. So, this comes from The Guardian, and Boris Johnson admits Brexit deal falls short for financial services. Boris Johnson has conceded that the Brexit trade deal perhaps does not go as far as we would like over access to EU markets for financial services, while investing has achieved an accord. His critics said would be impossible. While insisting he had achieved an accord for his critics that said would be impossible. With the interview with the Sunday Telegraph, the Prime Minister said that he had defined accusations of cakeism, seeking the impossible in getting the trade deal that allowed divergence from EU standards. It had been, Johnson said, billed out as out of the question that you could do a free trade deal with the EU without being drawn into their regulatory or legislative orbit. While service industries, the bulk of the UK exports to the EU, will face potential regulatory or other non-tariff barriers, Johnson said that there had been access for solicitors and barristers and a good deal for digital. But on financial services, he said the deal perhaps does not go far as we would like. And there are measures in the agreement for possible imposition of tariffs if the UK diverges noticeably from existing standards. Johnson has said that this should not be viewed by Brexit-minded Conservative MPs as too restrictive. All that's really saying is that the UK won't immediately send children up the chimneys or pour raw sewage over its beaches, he said. We're not going to regress, and you'd expect that. Saying that it was unlikely the UK would impose its own tariffs, Johnson added that any imposed by the EU would have to be proportionate and approved by the arbiter. And if that happened regularly, the UK would revert to WTO trading organisation terms. However, Johnson told the paper the UK could and would set its own path in some areas, mentioning one idea of the notion of the so-called free ports, the low tax zones which advocates say would boost economic growth, but which have been accused of helping tax evasion. Free ports exist within the EU, although with some restrictions. And remember, this has been tried before. Back during Margaret Thatcher, we actually had 12 free port zones in the UK, and only 2 actually succeeded. The first was Canary Wharf. That was one that succeeded predominantly because of the banking area that was situated around it. That's how that became a success. The other one was, of course, in Sunderland. That became a success because Margaret Thatcher convinced the Japanese, especially Nissan, to come in because we were the gateway to Europe. And that's how that succeeded. What they don't tell you is that all the other 10, essentially failed and did not provide any economic growth. So the Prime Minister said that more plans would emerge now the trade deal was finalised. A great government effort has gone into compiling these, and we haven't necessarily wanted to talk about them much, dealing this period because perhaps that would have been too fruitful, he added. We wanted to see what we can take forward. We don't want to diverge for the sake of diverging, but we're going to want to do things differently, and that's useful for the British people. MPs and peers will gather on the 30th of December to scrutinise and vote on the deal before the 1st of January expiry period of the current Brexit transition. While the fact that Labour has said that it will vote for the deal, Johnson guarantees it will pass easily. Johnson could still face anger from the strongly pro-Brexit wing of his party, who are currently examining the details of the agreement. In the interview, Johnson sought to portray the deal as the ultimate conclusion of Margaret Thatcher's 1988 speech in Bruges, in which she railed against the idea of a European superstate, calling Thatcher's address pathetic. It is the end of a long and fractious period in which we keep trying to pretend to ourselves that we could go along with all sorts of things we didn't really want to do for the sake of keeping up with the great project of the European Union, he said of the trade deal. I think that it gives us a new basis for a new friendship and partnership that should want to attract people who love Europe and want to have a great relationship with, who also want to feel close to it. Not going to happen, I'll tell you that now, given what we're reading about it. But it should also be something that is welcome to people who want to see the advantages of economic and political independence. I think the country as a whole has gotten itself into a new, more stable footing. It's a better relationship and a healthier relationship. Questionable. definitely questionable. But once again, as has been said by a lot of people, this deal pleases no one. It does not please the hardcore Brexiteers who are going to say that it leaves us still too much in the orbit of the EU, and it doesn't please people like me who want to be more part of the European Union. In fact, we want to just fully out and rejoin it. That's, my stated goal, and indeed a goal now of a lot of people. And that movement really starts on the 1st of January. And it will sooner or later succeed because economically and history-wise, essentially the 60s and 70s of Britain's economic decline are going to replay itself very, very much. Johnson is going to ultimately issue the idea of these free ports, which again are not going to work, just as they didn't work under Margaret Thatcher. And again, the only two reasons that they worked was, we said, because of the London financial institutions of Canary Wharf that moved there, and of course because Margaret Thatcher convinced Nissan, of course being part in the European single market at the time, or what would become it, was a good idea because we were a gateway to Europe. Again, those being the only two succeeded, while the other two did not succeed at all. History, my friends, is a bizarre way of repeating itself, but who knew we would be such in a literal sense of basically repeating it? So, as always, thanks for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button on your way out. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And thank you very much to the people who do support me that way. And with that said, thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.